We actually want to welcome a special guest on to Live Impact News. Katie Lobosco joins us, a senior reporter for Tax Notes. Katie, thanks so much for taking some time to do this. It's great to have you here. I'm Connor. I know this is our first time meeting outside of email, but how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. It's been a very busy week, and a lot of it goes back to everything that's happening in Washington, D.C. So we're really happy to have you here to kind of help us clear some of this stuff up or understand better what all is happening on Capitol Hill. I guess I want to start with this, which is it feels from our vantage point like this is an especially high strung time in Washington, D.C. There is this looming deadline. It is an issue that is going to affect constituents for every senator and every representative. And so the first thing I guess I'm wondering before we dig into any technicalities is just like what is the tone on Capitol Hill right now? Does it feel the way that it seems to us from the outside?
Well, I think it almost always feels a little high strung in Washington. I don't know if this week felt any more intense, but we did have two very big votes on healthcare yesterday in the Senate that both failed. So that was a busy day. However, we expected them to fail, which we can get into a little bit later. So there wasn't any big surprises.
And that is one of the strange things about it is as we are researching these two votes that are upcoming, one proposal from Republicans, one proposal from Democrats, everything that we read, even before the vote, says neither is expected to pass, which is a very strange approach to things. There's an inevitability at the end of this, and yet everyone still goes through the motions. Is there value in going through the motions?
Yes, it's extremely frustrating, especially if you're a person that might be affected by this expiring enhanced premium tax credit. I did talk to Senator Lisa Murkowski yesterday. She's a Republican from Alaska. She actually voted in favor of both plans. She wants something to happen. And she said something like, well, sometimes in the Senate, we have to show what we can't do before we can get to what we can do, which probably sounds very strange to the normal person. But sometimes you have to have these kind of failed votes to bring people to the negotiating table. At least that's what some senators are saying right now.
I'm going to start using that at work when I mess up a project. I'm going to say, look, first I have to fail at this before I can do it correctly. I'm putting that away in the back pocket.
Same
Okay, well,
here. Yeah.
you're right, exactly. Okay, let's dive into these two proposals then. I want to start with the Republican proposal. What is unique about the Republican proposal in the Senate that didn't pass that you think is important for people to understand?
So the Republican proposal would allow these enhanced premium tax credits for people enrolled in a ACA, an Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare exchange. They would allow them to expire. These were put in by Democrats. They were meant to be temporary. They were passed during the pandemic to help people struggling afford their health care. They're set to expire on December 31st. Now, the Republican plan here that failed yesterday, it would allow them to expire, but it would take some of those funds and expand accessibility to health savings accounts. So, what it was meant to do, if you got one of these enhanced tax credits, instead, you would get some federal money directly into an HSA that you have. There were restrictions on this, but it would be about $1,000 or $1,500, depending on your age. And the idea is that you could use this money to pay for your healthcare expenses. Now, you can't use this to pay for your premium, what you have to pay each month to be enrolled in a healthcare plan. But Republicans say this is better because you can decide how to use the money, maybe on your copay, maybe on your new eyeglasses, however you need to use it. So it was kind of a replacement for this tax credit.
Okay, so that you laid out kind of maybe one of the things that is beneficial about that plan, which is that you can decide how to use it. There's more versatility there, but I think based on my observation of just American life, most times that there are critical healthcare needs that goes beyond $1,500. Is that something that you have heard is a concern from people who oppose that?
Yes, critics of this plan say they are worried that people won't be able to enroll at all in health insurance because it's not helping you pay for the premium, what you have to pay to be enrolled in the first place. So that's one of the big criticisms of the idea to replace the tax credit with a federally funded health savings account. Now, Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, he's been out there talking about this plan a lot. He was one of the senators to introduce the bill. He says, well, you can then enroll in a lower level plan, a bronze level or a catastrophic plan, and that gives you a lower premium than maybe a silver plan. And then you can use your HSA money to pay for your expenses. However, these lower level plans also come with really high deductibles. So if you have a lot of healthcare needs, a lot of healthcare costs, I saw some of these plans, the deductible is $7,000 a year. So $1,000 in your HSA may not go very far in that situation.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so that is the Republican proposal that, again, did not pass. There was a Democrat proposal that did not pass as well. What are the important points to understand about that proposal?
So it's a little more straightforward on the Democratic side. They just wanted a straight up 3-year extension of these enhanced premium tax credits. Now, why Republicans maybe could not get on board with this. There are some Republicans that want to see these tax credits extended. However, they want to see some reforms to the credit. They're worried about waste, fraud, and abuse, which there is evidence that some of that exists. They want to see maybe an income cap, so not everybody is eligible for these what were supposed to be temporary enhanced premium tax credits. Instead, the Democrats put forward a straight up extension, no changes. And so a lot of Republicans are not going to be able to support that.
Okay, so now we have a situation where there's two proposals. Neither of those proposals has been agreed to. What is the next step?
Well, we'll take the Senate first. So I talked to some senators yesterday, and they were optimistic that maybe now is the time where we can work towards a bipartisan solution. Senate Finance Committee Chair Mike Crapo, I talked to him, and he said, all along I wanted to do a bipartisan plan. But how long is that going to take? I think it's unlikely that we'll get there before Congress leaves for the holidays next Friday. So we are up against the clock here. Now, on the House side, I'll get into, we have a lot of other things going on. We do have some bipartisan proposals in the House. There's actually many of them, but there are two leading ones now, and they have Republicans and Democrats behind them. These are usually moderate members who are maybe in a vulnerable political district, and they don't want their constituents to see their premium skyrocket come January. And so there's a mix of proposals, but generally they will extend the tax credit for a year or two, also make some reforms. Now, these House members that have these plans, they are trying to force a vote. They're trying to get around leadership who has not endorsed these plans. They filed what is called a discharge petition. And if they get 218 signatures on these discharge petitions, then they can force a vote on these bills on the floor. Hopefully, next week before Friday, before they leave. As of now, neither of these petitions have enough signatures. They have enough Republicans signed on so that if all the Democrats sign on, it could move forward. But as of now, the Democrat leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, has not endorsed either of these bipartisan proposals.
Okay, Hakeem Jeffries, who we just were hearing from on Live Impact News before we began our interview. Now, when it comes to going home for the holidays, is there any world in which elected officials say, you know what, we haven't figured this out, we're not going home for the holidays, we're going to stay here until we solve this problem?
I mean, we have seen that before, but I think in this case, they've tried. Unless they're really close on something on Friday, I could see them staying a couple days. But I think that, Congress, they've had two votes. There have been attempts. They've been working on this for months. So I just don't see a real chance of them staying longer unless they're really, really close to coming to a deal.
And so if we do find ourselves in that situation where they do not get close enough to stick around, and then their absence leads to no deal being struck by January 1st, is there any sort of protection that can then be enacted to make sure double-digit millions of people don't lose their health care?
I mean, I would say not all hope is lost. There's something could be done when Congress returns in January. Um, it's a little late in the game, right? People are already enrolling in their healthcare for next year, and they have to choose a plan by December 15th, which is Monday, in order to avoid a lapse in insurance come January. But technically, open enrollment is until January 15th. There might be a lapse if you don't sign up in January, but it would start later in the year. So there is kind of another deadline there. Even if they don't do something by January 15th, I think it's possible they pass something that maybe retroactively reopens open enrollment, but we are getting into a very complicated, messy area for people who just need to decide what healthcare they're gonna be able to afford next year.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure how to frame this next question. We know that these extensions were at the center of the government shutdown, and that enough Democrats voted to pass the funding bill through without getting that extension that they held out for so long. Now that we've gotten this late in the game, and there still does not appear to be meaningful progress towards a solution, is there a sense of regret that they went over and decided to pass the spending bill through without getting this extension? Is that a fair question?
I think that's a fair question, but Democrats are certainly not expressing any regret at the moment because they can say, hey, the ball's kind of in Republicans' their court. They control the Senate, they control the House, and the presidency. So the pressure's on them is what they say on the other side. So I don't think there's regret that they ended the government shutdown. Government shutdowns no one really likes. It causes a lot of pain and uncertainty for people. And so I think, and in the end of that shutdown, enough Democrats decided enough is enough. They flipped their votes in exchange for a promised vote on the Senate floor to address the expiring tax credit. And that's what brought us to yesterday. That's how we got to this vote on a Democratic proposal.
Mm-hmm. And, you talk about the ball's in their court and how lawmakers can say, well, the ball's in their court because they didn't do this. And on both sides, they can say, oh, well, it was their fault or it was their fault. I think maybe that is at the heart of what's so frustrating for most people who are observing this situation is stop blaming each other and figure out a solution because it's everyone who's watching this that's going to suffer. So that's, and I know you're reflecting what they're saying, but is that I guess this also is not the most professional question, but is that a fair sentiment to express? And is there any sense of that on Capitol Hill that just because it's maybe not your fault does not mean that it's fair to just dismiss this issue? Is that reasonable?
I can totally understand how Americans are completely frustrated with this, especially when you have proposals in the House that appear to have support from members of both sides of the aisle that would temporarily extend the tax credits with some reforms and promises to do things later. So I would completely understand people being incredibly frustrated. But at the moment, I just don't see either side really budging. Democrats have really stuck with pushing for their 3-year straight up extension. And at this point, they're saying it's too late to do anything major. This is already happening. We have to extend it straight up, and then we can talk about changes to the healthcare system, which both sides agree. Healthcare is too expensive. There's plenty of problems and things need to be addressed, but it's too late to try to change the enhanced premium tax credit is what Democrats say.
Yeah, as someone who is a veteran of procrastination, it is quite frustrating to see that this particular issue, it has allowed to become a situation where it's too late. That's so tough to kind of sit back and try to digest. I guess on a more sort of theoretical point, is there something, what is it about healthcare that is such a sticking point and such a consistent divide between the two parties. We know there are a number of issues that separate Republicans and Democrats, but it seems like this one repeatedly seems to be a real sticking point that they just cannot find common ground on. What is it about healthcare that makes it so?
You're right. I think there's a couple of reasons. I mean, one, healthcare is incredibly complicated, right? Like there are so many different, I mean, just in the past couple of weeks, we saw, I can't even remember how many proposals put forth by members of Congress to try to fix this. And then you have the politics of it that you mentioned. I mean, the ACA, Obamacare became so politicized. I mean, many Republicans have campaigned for years against Obamacare. Remember the whole repeal and replace campaign. And so to ask or expect Republicans to vote to extend any part of Obamacare is a really, really tough sell.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. But is there anything, do you get the sense that maybe this has crossed the line from making decisions for the best of the American people into we have to win this fight? I mean, do you feel like it's become overly politicized to the point where that's become more of a priority than the actual health care coverage for millions of people?
Well, I will say that both sides do want to address the cost of healthcare. And I will
Hmm.
point out, a lot of Republicans don't want to extend these tax credits. And I think it's important to remember there is the baseline premium tax credit that will still be in place, that it was created at the inception of Obamacare. And so anyone who earns less than 400% of the federal poverty line, which is about $128,000 for a family of four, they will still get a tax credit. It may not be as big as it was before the enhancement, but they will still get help paying for their health care. And a lot of Republicans say that was the original plan. This enhancement was for the pandemic. It was to help people struggle as we had this major economic crisis. And so it's time to let this tax credit expire.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm glad that you kind of provide that perspective. And thank you for continuing to humor me as I kind of at times dive into a reflection of frustrations of the American people. I do appreciate you kind of going with me down that road a couple
The
of times
American
here.
people need someone to ask the tough questions.
Was that is yeah I have very rarely have I been adequately able to fill that mantle, but I'm certainly trying my best now. When it comes to, we've talked a lot about senators and representatives. When it comes to the presidential administration, to President Trump and his administration, can you give us a sense of kind of their views on this fight?
Well, President Trump has not really weighed in, I would say, on this situation. He's really leaving it up to Congress to deal with this. There is a sentiment that if he did weigh in, something might happen. If he wanted to get these extended, maybe House Speaker Mike Johnson would put something on the floor. Or if he was totally against it, you would know there would be no votes on the Republican side to extend it. But at the moment, he's kind of taken a back seat to this issue.
Okay, so a back seat is certainly what it seems like. Now, beyond that, is there anything else that we need to know? Is there anything else you think is an important part of this issue that we maybe haven't touched on?
Well, I will touch on a little bit the argument that there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse with the enhanced premium tax credit. And I will just, that's what Republicans say that there needs to be reform so that this doesn't happen. And there is evidence that people are enrolled and don't even know they're enrolled. And so to dig in a little bit about how that works. So the tax credit is actually usually paid directly to the insurance company that then reduces the premium for the taxpayer. And so what that does is create a situation where the insurance company or a shady broker has the incentive to keep people enrolled without them even knowing. And there are some people that have $0 premiums. So it's possible that they may not even know that they're enrolled. And I think a lot of people could agree there's there's a problem with that. And so that's why a lot of the Republican plans want to address that and not have money go directly to the insurance company. Or in the case of one of the bipartisan proposals in the House, it would create a minimum, I believe it's just a $5 minimum premium. So people knew that they were enrolled, and it would kind of do away with that incentive for maybe a shady broker to keep enrolling people without their knowledge.
And that in particular sticking point, do you think that is something that Democrats would be able to compromise on?
I can't say I've talked to any Democrats about that specifically, but there was an income limit in that bipartisan proposal. It was, if you made under, I think, 150% of the federal poverty line, you wouldn't be subject to this $5 minimum. But on the other hand, healthcare is complicated, and some lawmakers don't want to create any more barriers to enrollment. You already have to there's people who don't have time to do all the research and decide what insurance coverage plan they have. And so if you add another barrier or another verification process, Democrats may say that's too hard or making it too hard for people to enroll.
And just laying out those two answers back to back, really a good summary of how complicated this is and how much there is. Well, we could make this work, but then that would create this problem. And then there's the unintended consequence of this, and is just a really good showcase of how complex this is and maybe why we're in this situation. Well, Katie, we cannot thank you enough for joining us today. That was, this is great. We really appreciate you coming on and being able to lend that perspective. And is there anything else you want to add before we let you go?
I think we covered it all. It's a
Okay.
complicated situation, and I'm uh, I'm not optimistic something will be resolved by Friday before the holidays, but there is the chance something could happen in January.
Okay, and we talk about how much the representatives and senators are having to work through this. We know you're working very tirelessly as well, so I hope that you kind of get to that Christmas vacation soon, and you get to take a little bit of time off as well, and hopefully we get this solution figured out. And when we do get this figured out, hopefully we would love to have you back on our platform to talk a little bit more about a hopeful resolution that's to come.
Of course, looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you, Katie. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that was Katie Lobosco again joining us to talk about these Affordable Care Act tax credits that have been at the center of so much debate and so much division in Washington. And as you heard, not optimistic that something gets done by the holidays, but that does not mean that something can't get done in January. So we'll be keeping a sharp eye on that story as always.